So in this lesson, I'm going to outline for you a 5-point checklist to prepare you mentally, physically, and emotionally. Get you ready for that next gig. But you know, the next gig means different things for different gigs. And so, for instance, is your next gig a debut at the Metropolitan Opera House in the famed Lincoln Center?
I don't think so.
Or are you getting ready to sing at a sold-out Broadway show?
Not your next gig.
Or maybe you're in a rock band and your next gig is to appear on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Maybe not just yet.
Oh, how about maybe The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon?
Not yet.
Okay, well then maybe you're a pop or R&B artist and you've got a sold-out concert at Radio City Music Hall.
But you know that's highly unlikely.
Well, if that's not likely, then maybe what is likely is one day you'll be preparing to sing for 30,000 people at a sold-out baseball stadium. Or think of it this way. If you want one of those situations to be your next gig someday, well then you've got to treat every gig like it's a big professional occasion. Every gig should be your best, and that just means you walk into that location acting as if. If you want to be a professional singer, you got to treat yourself like a professional singer. And to be at your best, you know we have to reduce anxiety. And the best way to reduce anxiety is to be familiar with your surroundings, if you will, and to be thoroughly prepared. And so you should arrive at every gig excited, ready to perform. So here's 5 tips to help you make the best of your next gig. Doesn't matter if it's at a restaurant or a bar or a church or a senior center. Every gig counts because you're there. You're developing your ability to make an audience elevate. And so my first tip or suggestion is that you get clear on the expectation of each gig. If there's an owner or a booker for that gig, what are his or her expectations of you? When are you going to arrive? Get clear on all the details. That will help to reduce anxiety. So not only the booker will give you info about how long you're going to play, how many sets there's going to be, but also what kind of equipment you may need to bring to the venue and what volume you're expected to play at. If it's a restaurant gig, there may be some rules about not being too loud, and you want to be prepared for that ahead of time rather than hear about it as you're starting your first set. But also there's an expectation of an audience that fills a place. If you're singing at a wedding or if you're singing at a hospital or at a senior center, very different expectation for the performer than if you're at a bar, in a rock band. And so getting clear on the expectation of those that are going to be listening to you is a great way to reduce the stress and anxiety at each gig. And then the final thing in that is that your expectation. What are you hoping to achieve by doing said gig? You should have an expectation for every gig, and that should be something you could probably journalize and therefore check in with yourself afterwards and see if you maintain that. Okay, once you get clear on what the gig is, number 2 is to memorize your material as best as possible. If you want to be present during a performance, you really got to get rid of the iPads or even the sheet music. Now, if the thought of that gives you anxiety, memorize your music, memorize your lyrics, but you can have the iPad there or the sheet music there, but it's impossible to be doing 2 things at the same time. So if you're glancing over your lyrics, you're not going to be projecting any kind of emotion to the listeners, other than you're giving a cursory reading of the song. And listeners don't know, exactly what to expect from you. So it may not be upsetting to them that you're looking at the sheet music as you're singing the song. But again, your expectation of the gig won't be met if you're putting such a low bar in place that it's just getting through the songs is your goal. There's a lot more to a gig than that. And a good way to make sure you're achieving a high level of professionalism is to record or video each rehearsal. That's my number 3 tip. Now, these days, it's very easy to record yourself and video yourself because everybody's phone has an app that has a camera or movie or some form of recording device in it. It doesn't have to be fancy at all. The point here is that knowing you're recording yourself or videoing a performance, a practice performance, will put you in a little bit of a performance state, a little more than just sort of running through the material, making sure you know it. And if you're in a choir, it's a really good idea to announce to your section that you're recording them, and that'll make everybody stiffen up their backbone a little bit and honor their parts a little bit more. And they'll want to check in with your recording later and see how it was. But in other words, a dress rehearsal is easy to create if you're performing often, simply by recording or videoing your performance. Then, of course, you check in with that recording or video afterwards. Did you entertain yourself? Would you want to come see you? If you're not moved by what you're seeing, make adjustments at the next rehearsal. This is the best way to develop, a quick way to develop, is to be really honest with yourself of if you are moved by any of your presentations. If so, you're going to walk into your gig excited. That's our goal, remember. You're going to walk into your gig excited for the people that are in attendance. You're going to be excited for what they're about to see and hear. And that's really important. Okay, number 4 on my little checklist here is to practice your warm-up routine. It's, we all have our sort of like our standard issue warm-ups that we're used to doing. And your video or your recording will let you know if certain songs were difficult for you to achieve, if the first 3 songs of a set that you videoed were not as good as the last 6 in the set. These are things that you want to be honest with yourself about and adjust your warm-up accordingly. Warm-ups are usually best counter to what the gig is. So that means if you have a 3-set or 4-set engagement at a restaurant or a club, it's going to be a long gig, then a short warm-up will suffice because generally your first couple of songs will be sort of like a way to ease into the night. But if you're singing just one solo, or if you're singing one song at The Late Show or Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, and you want a long warm-up, which includes a couple of dress rehearsals in the green room. In other words, you want to sing the song you're about to perform a few times to make sure when you do perform that one song, you're hot and ready to go. And again, videoing yourself and getting familiar with your prep and your warm-up routine will allow you to know exactly what's needed in that time when it's showtime. You also want to scout out the location. If there's anything that you're anxious about, take a test drive, see how long it takes you to get there in the same time that you'll be traveling to the venue. If you're not familiar with it, you might want to step inside the venue, see where you're going to set up. Give yourself a visualization so you can imagine yourself playing there while you're preparing. That's going to be really valuable. And it includes a church you may not be familiar with. Where do you walk in? Where will you be sitting? Where's the choir going to be? Familiarity really reduces anxiety, and we want to reduce as much of that anxiety as possible so your brain isn't working on being very defensive while you're performing. You can elevate everything you sing. And that brings me to the performance time. Number 5 is to adjust your body clock so that you are in peak performance readiness, like just ready to go at the hour you'll be performing. So if you have a day job and you're used to kind of crashing and going to bed around 11 or maybe even 10:30, and then on some Friday night you have a gig with a band and you're going to be singing at 1 a.m., well, you got to adjust your body clock so that you are more acclimated to that later hour. You don't want to wait till that night. You're going to be changing your metabolism, and there are many things that the voice depends on, and metabolism is one of them. The same thing goes for an early morning church performance or choir performance. If you're going to be singing at 8 a.m., then you'll want to adjust your body clock slowly in the week prior so that each day you get up an hour earlier than you're used to, so that you have a good 3 hours at least before that 8 a.m. performance. A good gauge for morning performances for me is if my eyes or face is puffy, then I know the inside of myself is going to be a little puffy, so your voice is going to be a little foggy. When we're laying down for 7 or 8 hours, our body fluids redistribute. That's why your face and eyes are puffy in the morning, and the same thing goes for your vocal folds. So everybody knows what their morning voice sounds like, and there's no rushing that. So you want to wake up early enough, 5 a.m., for a morning performance so that you can eat, shower, digest, get a little exercise going in there. And the whole point is to fool your body so you are ready to sing at your peak power performance readiness whenever showtime is. So those 5 points to me are very valuable. And if you really want to make every gig count, you'll take a little checklist of this and you'll check in with yourself after each performance. So to elevate your game, you're going to run down your checklist, like, did your prep work? Did you memorize your material? This is after your performance. Check in with yourself and be honest. Because the only way you're going to develop as a singer is if you can take yourself through some constructive criticism. So run down that list again. Did the gig meet your expectation? Did it meet the owner or the booker's expectation? Did you screw up memorizing any of your music? And was the recording of your rehearsal the same as the recording or your memory of your gig? It's not a bad idea to record or to video each gig, but sometimes that's not appropriate. So when it is, though, obviously checking the video with what you did at rehearsal and check what happened at performance, those two should match, obviously. That's our goal to work towards. And then, did the warm-up routine suffice? Did what you do before the performance help? Was it really exactly what you wanted? And also, was your body alert and awake, or were you dragging yourself, falling asleep because of the late hour, or not quite awake because of the early hour? These are all things that are very adjustable, and they will help you reduce anxiety. When you reduce anxiety, your brain is free and open and available. And then to me, it's just all about the joy of singing. Every gig is an opportunity to spread that joy, and that should be your full focus every gig you sing.